Most Pokemon are based on animals.
Oh geez, gosh, stop. That might be too much for your viewers.
And birds are a kind of animal.
What?
Okay, fine, I'll get to the point. I'm about to explain all of the regional bird Pokemon. And I don't just mean what birds they mostly pull from. I mean, do you know how quick and simple that'd be?
Seriously, it'd be like, this is a pigeon.
Ah, dear God.
There's more.
No. I mean, like, why does Mega Pidgeot have that hair? And what's it got to do with Egypt? Why do we associate owls with wisdom and time? 2 samurai birds? Why not? I mean, there's even a knight, a pirate, and a Frankish flaming crossbow. Speaking of weapons, a cannon? And why does a toucan evolve from a woodpecker? Or a pigeon into a pheasant, for that matter? There is honestly a lot here to discuss and learn about, from zoology and mythology to cultural history and more, which is why I love delving into Pokemon lore. Every single Pokemon has something deeper hidden within. Most Pokemon have something deeper to be found within their origins and lessons to teach us. So without further ado, let's talk about trees and wood. I mean, birds love wood, so allow me to show you my favorite piece of wood. It's this gorgeous piece from Hulskjord, this video's sponsor. Based in Austria, they make the favorite watches, jewelry, handbags, and sunglasses of birds the world over because they are made out of natural materials like wood. Birds love wood. Not so much stone though, 2 birds and all that, but just get a look at these pieces I got a hold of. They really show off the beauty of that natural stone and wood grain, making each and every piece creative and unique. It just shouts, I love nature, and or trees, or even I love bees in the case of this combo I got my wife, which is the next point. Gifts are great, but sometimes it's hard to figure out what to give, you know? But I can't think of a single soul who wouldn't appreciate one of Hulskjord's unique products. And all orders placed before December 20th are guaranteed to arrive before Christmas. So check them out with the link below and save 15% by using the code Noggin15. You can count the savings like the watches count time. Oh gosh, look at that iridescence. I love the finer woods. Oh, and I didn't even mention the lovely boxes they come in. I love the cork pillows. But right. The first birds. The Pidgey line. These guys are everyone's favorite OG bird Pokemon because the alternative is, a jerk. Plus, what's not to love about a pudgy pigeon, an Italian pigeon, and a jet pigeon? Pretty fitting that the first generic bird Pokemon are based on the world's most generic bird species, right? Well, not exactly. Let's cut to the chase. These are not pigeons. Like, this is a pigeon. But no matter what their names may imply, you can't just look at any random bird and go, yep, that looks like a turkey. I mean, sure, the Pokemon has plenty of behavioral references to pigeons, such as the anime's Pidgey mail carrying service being an homage to World War II carrier pigeons. But again, that on its own doesn't make them pigeons. So, what are they? Well, before that, let's take a look at what Kanto Pokemon are really made of. Gen 1 is pretty straightforward when it comes to designs. You usually either get loosely inspired features without representing an exact species, like a turtle shell or a rhino horn, or in rare cases, they'll literally just throw an animal in and barely change its design. Game Freak really just threw an eastern tiger swallowtail caterpillar into the game, even though it's filled with fantasy creatures and monsters, but it's literally... And there's also Krabby. Pidgey is pretty much identical to a female rose-breasted grosbeak. Grosbeak? Grosbeak. They do have gross beaks, but is it a grosbeak? Both of my guesses were wrong. It's a grosbeak. But yeah, it's that. And then the evolutions, basically just red-tailed hawks. Let's start with the prior. Pink beak, yellow eyebrows, brown back. It has it all. And for those small things we can't explain, they're just design liberties that Game Freak took before they really got this whole design thing down. You know, just Gen 1 things. Why only 3 toes? Just Gen 1 things. Why does it gain another toe? Just Gen 1 things. Why no chest spots? Just Gen 1 things. Why did my childhood cat run away? Just Gen 1 things. Anyways, it's a lot easier to explain the other two. Just remove their crests and voila, they're both just hawks with red tails. A red-tailed hawk, you could say. It's not just the tail either. The beak, the light chest, and the brown back all match too. In fact, the one thing in their design, not necessarily grosbeak or hawk inspired, are these black streaks on their face. And these two can be explained by another species of bird. They're the facial patterns that we see on various falcon species. Pidgeot is famous for its flight speeds, maxing out at Mach 2, and falcons are incredibly fast as well. We'll get more into detail about that in another video, but aside from just a speedy bird, this isn't the only place the face markings come from. Well, it is, but this time in a different context. Egyptian mythology. Horus and Ra are the Egyptian gods of the sky and sun, respectively. And not only do they both have the head of a falcon specifically, meaning that they have this Pidgey eye pattern as well, but also there's that whole hair headdress thing, right? That's just like what Pidgeotto and Pidgeots have on their heads, big head crest. Though I suppose it could also just be inspired by various cockatoo species, which just brings us even deeper into the whole it's just a generic bird aspect. But regardless, it's clear how Pidgeot's speed could make it seen as a god of the sky, especially as its shinies match the color of the sun, at least in some depictions, including Egyptian ones. So put simply, they are a trio of god birds, generic god birds. But let's make it a quartet and talk about Mega Pidgeot. With the exception of the hair, it's almost the same as regular Pidgeot, just add some extra blue on its wings and tail. It's kind of a lame Mega, but then again, Megas are all kind of lame. But it's hair now! That's just Super Saiyan hair, isn't it? Super Saiyan 2, to be exact. When you think about it, Mega Evolution is basically just the Super Saiyan power-up of Pokemon anyways, so it makes sense that at least one of the new Mega Evolutions would have it. After all, Pokemon is an anime, and one full of references to other anime, many of which just go over American heads. But Dragon Ball Z is one of, if not the most well-known and iconic anime ever. I mean, it started the whole I'm powering up! I scream hard enough that my hair grows huge. That's all they're doing, actually. Their magic is stored in the hair, and so they just and then the hair grows faster. That's what I assume anyway. Powering up, turning golden, having energy go all around you, hair getting bigger and all that, it became a trope that has been used in several anime afterwards. And games. All of Golden Sonic and Mega Evolution. Mega Pidgeot specifically. But it's not just an anime reference. It's not just Saiyan hair. It's also pretty reminiscent of a Pidgeot. Reminder, nobody knows exactly how Egyptian words are pronounced. Ancient Egyptian words, I should specify. A Pidgeot is a double crown of sorts worn by Egyptian pharaohs. It was a symbol of unity in Egyptian culture, as it was created by combining the white Hedjet crown of Upper Egypt with the red Deshret crown of Lower Egypt. And honestly, it's pretty close to Mega Pidgeot's hair. It's even got the little doodly blip. And considering both Ra and Horus had these crowns too, honestly, I'd say it's case closed. This is Super Saiyan Pharaoh haircut. And that's pretty cool. Case closed, at least for their physical design, but we're not done. If you thought their appearance was confusing, just wait until we get to their Pokedex entries. Collectively, they have 64 Dex entries across the mainline series, and they reference so many other bird things that none of the aforementioned species do. For starters, very docile. If attacked, it will often kick up sand to protect itself rather than fight back. This is a reference to just birds in general, of course. They don't really kick up mini dust devils or anything, but they do use dust and sand to bathe themselves as the sand absorbs excess oil and dry skin. But here's another Dex entry. When hunting, it skims the surface of the water at high speed to pick off unwary prey, such as Magikarp. But the main birds they pull from, red-tailed hawks, prefer rodents and hunting in forests, so the fishing sounds much more like the behavior of eagles and osprey, expert fishers who hunt in this exact manner. Here's another Dex entry. The Pokemon has dazzling plumage of beautifully glossy feathers. That tends to be a thing more often associated with smaller birds, especially males in the mating season, rather than birds of prey in general. It can fly continuously for 2 weeks without resting. Most raptors can't do that. Eagles can last 4 to 6 hours without resting, for instance. But the endurance of many smaller birds is intense, like the Alpine Swift, which can go 6 months just in the air. People will always go to Albatross because of that fun fact where they spend most of the year not landing, but they do still land on the ocean and rest while on the ocean. Doesn't count as landing though, because it's not landing. All in all, each of these bird Pokemon are, just as their Pokedex category says, they are the bird Pokemon. Just about as generic of birds as you can get, from the little passerine birds to the big birds of prey. there's something here from all of them. So no, they are not just pigeons. Even Pidgey is not just a pigeon. That's why Pidove was okay generations later. It's actually just a pigeon. And don't you worry, we'll get to that. But first, do you hear that? They say the best ideas come to those who wait. At least it's something like that. So that's what I'm gonna do today. No plans. No nothing. I'm just going to sit here on my feet in silence and let the universe tell me what to do. Well, that's enough of that. But this gives me an idea. It's about time we got to talk about the favorite Pokemon of Ken Sugimori, the creator of Pokemon. No, really, he's on record stating that Hoothoot was his most favorite Pokemon he ever designed. Well, until he changed his mind and went with Gengar in a later interview. Good choice. Yeah. Still, it's surprising that Hoothoot ever was, honestly. There's nothing inherently wrong with the design. It's adorable, but it's not exactly iconic. So what makes this tiny owl so special? Well, Ken's reason is quite simple. Nostalgia. Sugimori owned a pet bird as a kid that used to stand on one leg. The species of his bird is unknown. It probably wasn't an owl, though pet owls aren't unheard of in Japan. But what's important here is what's in the heart. And just so we're clear, Hoothoot, or Hoothoot if you're feeling devilish, does have 2 feet. It's just shy about the second one, so it's usually tucked up inside of its feathers somewhere. Birds standing on 1 foot is by no means uncommon. Plenty of birds of various size and shape do this, owls included. Being a bird is exhausting, you see, because they can't sit. Like, no, really. Anatomically, it is pretty much impossible. You may have seen some, like, pigeons being chill, though, but that bird is suffering from a deadly tendon disease. There's always exceptions to rules, but generally, it's pretty much impossible for birds to truly sit the way we humans do. So the only real way they can relax their legs is to switch between feet. But aside from just a relief mechanism, it also makes Hoothoot kind of look like its legs are a pendulum hanging from a grandfather clock, doesn't it? I don't think it's a surprise to say Hoothoot has many clock elements incorporated into its design. Its body is shaped like the face of a clock. It's got clock gear eyeliner, and its eyebrows are the clock hands. Even its name, Hoothoot, aside from being the onomatopoeia for an owl call, kinda has the same repetition and inflection as a cuckoo clock, saying cuckoo, cuckoo, hoo-hoo, Hoothoot! See? It works! And not to mention, owls themselves are just as common in clock designs as any other bird, except, actually, no, they are more common. In fact, the very first cuckoo clock ever invented in the 3rd century used water pressure and a whistle to make an owl move. And clocks with owl designs are just as prevalent today, too. Here's one my grandma owns. It's old as heck. I remember its eyes staring into my soul all the way back when I was a wee lad. And that's enough of that! Time's up! So back to birds and clock designs. Birds are pretty much nature's timekeepers when you think about it. Let's play a fun game. We'll turn off the lights. Let's see if you can guess what time of day it is. If you said daybreak or dawn, then that's 1 point for you. Next! Give yourself another point if you said nighttime. This one is a bit tougher. A loon during dusk is a thing. Let me know in the comments if you got that one, and maybe subscribe while you're down there. But you get the point now. The Pokédex supports this claim as well. It has a perfect sense of time. Whatever happens, it keeps rhythm by precisely tilting its head in time. It begins to hoot at the same time every day. Some trainers use them in place of clocks. Oh, it's no wonder Hoothoot's eyes are so red. The poor thing never gets any sleep. It's busy being a clock. But actually, it makes a lot of sense that their eyes are so red. Hoothoot and Noctowl seem to be based on a horned species of owl. No, they don't actually have horns, but various species like the great horned owl or the Eurasian eagle owl have tufted feathers on their foreheads that certainly look like horns. And the one that inspired Hoothoot fits the bill too. The Japanese Scops owl, which I will forever call the Scoops owl, because they are free. You can just and it's yours. It's a great match too. It's a small brown owl with red eyes and feather horns, and it's found throughout Japan, including Kansai, the real-life inspiration for the Johto region where Hoothoot calls home. Noctowl too is based on a Japanese species of horned owl, the previously mentioned Eurasian eagle owl. It's a pretty close match overall. The eyebrows are accented with blonde, and these triangles on the Pokemon's chest are nearly identical to the streaks all over the bird, and the similarities don't stop at appearance. This Pokemon's Pokedex entries are insanely accurate to the real-life counterpart. Its eyes are specially adapted. They concentrate even faint light and enable it to see in the dark. Its extremely soft feathers make no sound in flight. It silently sneaks up on prey without being detected. Really, both of these dex entries also apply exactly to owls in general, like they didn't even add any special Pokemon nonsense. These are just literal owl facts. Even this one, when it needs to think, it rotates its head 180 degrees to sharpen its intellectual power. It's technically true as well. In fact, in this case, the real animal beats the Pokemon. How often does that happen? Real owls rotate their heads nearly 270 degrees. And technically, I can too. I'd just die. Ever wonder why owls can nearly turn their head in a complete circle, but when you look left the wrong way, you're suddenly on life support? This is because owls are basically triple jointed, and their necks have more arteries than a typical bird too. Though, the turning motion actually restricts the blood flow in some arteries depending on the position of the head, and that's blood flow to the brain specifically, so these arteries and the heart are always working overtime to make up for this lost brain blood. In a way, some of these owls almost have to manually pump blood to their brains, thanks to all the extra arteries in there. Or at least they have to conscientiously remember, oh wait, I can't look that way too long, I'll pass out. But this is Pokemon after all, it can't all be true to life. And there's no reason turning its head would make the animal smarter. If anything, based on what we just discussed, it makes them dumber, restricting blood flow to the brain and all that. But Pokemon Ultramoon gets even crazier by saying that Noctowl can turn its head completely upside down, which real-life owls can kind of do, but it's more like they just look upwards really, really far. Ow. Like, I don't care who you are. You can't turn your head just literally however you please. Oops. On another note, does this line fit the prey-to-predator theme shown by all the other regional birds? You bet it does. Though they are a bit different. While the other lines start as small passerine birds and evolve into birds of prey, that's not the case for these two. Instead, the base animal stays the same. But the Japanese scops owl sticks to insects, frogs, and small mammals. The Eurasian eagle owl, on the other hand, sizes up its diet, hunting rabbits, herons, and even smaller owls! The betrayal! How could you eat your baby? I get that you've become a grouchy old man as evident by your bushy anime eyebrow, but you can't do that! No, I realize old people are wise and knowledgeable, hence also the many depictions of Father Time, but what does that have to do? Yes, I understand that owls represent wisdom. I don't understand what you're... You're not suggesting that I eat a baby to gain wisdom. Don't just sit there. Go to the next scene. Go. Anyways, yes, owls are a common symbol of wisdom. Of course, Noctowl's name was derived from nocturnal and owl because, I don't know, owls are most active at night and all. Owls in general are also amazing at stealth hunting. Their feathers are built in ways that trap sound, effectively letting them flap inaudibly, allowing them to sneak up on their prey completely unnoticed. But they themselves can also hear a lot, just hearing everything, because their ears are placed on their heads all wonky, so they can pinpoint the exact location of a scurrying rodent in true 3D space. And I mean, have you heard of Peruvian owls? They are smart enough that they hunt in pairs, because they're in cahoots. They're in cahoots! But this stealthy and nocturnal hunting style impressed the ancient Greeks, who bestowed the bird their intelligent status in the first place. They believed owls could produce magical light from their eyes that allowed them to see in the dark, a concept that directly inspired Noctowl's glowing eyes, might I add. But they took this idea one step further. They believed this light was a gift from Athena, the goddess of wisdom. She was so fond of owls that they're considered her sacred animal, and many depictions pair her with an owl that sits on her shoulder, acting as a second set of eyes to watch her back and reveal the truths of the world to her. So, Kanto's regional bird incorporated Egyptian mythology, and Johto's is Greek, and that's neat. It's a shame they kinda dropped this theming for future generations, but I guess they sorta brought it back for Gen 8.
Also, Noctowl is one of the OG shiny Pokemon alongside the red Gyarados.
Very true, Birdkeeper Toby. Also, I love that Hoothoot hat.
Sorry, did you just pronounce the th in Hoothoot? That's disgusting. Anyway, Noctowl was the first shiny Pokemon introduced in the anime, and of course Ash Ketchum added it to his team, and is the only shiny Pokemon that Ash has ever caught, so Noctowl's got some pretty impressive origins, right?
Oh, it's shiny color. Gold? Well, no, because there's no real owls that really match that color, but there are yellow owl clovers and succulent owl's clover plants that match.
They mostly live in Minnesota!
Gold is associated with age and wisdom, though, your golden years and all that, after you've spent a lot of time on this earth. And also gold and brass are often used in classy, high-end clock parts. So it all works out pretty good, I guess. Ultimately, though, Hoothoot and Noctowl's clock motif works well not only because of the connections between owls and wisdom with age and thus a lot of time, but also with just their connection to clocks in general. And of course, the fact that Pokemon Gold and Silver were the first Pokemon games to introduce real time, a real clock system in-game that cycles between day and night, and that changes which Pokemon are out and about. And of course, these two Pokemon are the icons of nocturnal Pokemon. Hence Noctowl.
So really, what better time to introduce a tiny Pokemon?
Precisely. There's almost always a reason why a Pokemon is introduced in the game that it is. And that being said, there is another bird that is pretty confusing. We are gonna have to go out of order a little bit here, which might also be a tad confusing, but like, just look at Starly. You know, I'm getting to that point where I can't tell if I'm looking at a real animal or a Pokemon. Like, am I dreaming? Am I playing too much Pokemon Go? Is that a Pokemon or is it just some bird? But can you blame me? Game Freak made Starly, and it's literally just a bird. It's mainly dark gray-brown with a paler belly and a whitish band across the rump. Its head is blackish, with whitish cheeks and a whitish forehead. There is a white border on the tail and white markings on the secondary wing feathers. The legs are pale orange, and the bill is orange with a black tip. Adult females are similar to the males, but paler and duller.
Oi, wait! Starly's gender difference is its forehead, not its whole color!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think I was still talking about Starly? No. This is the Wikipedia page for the white-cheeked starling, a species of bird found across Japan, which is where its home region, Sinnoh, is based. So if you didn't believe me before, it's literally just a bird. Even beyond appearance, every Pokédex entry they have mentions how the species flocks together in large numbers. Every single one. The only exceptions to this rule are their black and white entries, and that's because they use the word group instead of flock. Like, there's no other way to say it. Starly and Staravia are just boring. The only defining characteristic the starling doesn't have is the tuft of feathers on the top of their heads, though the crest of the northern lapwing does provide a suitable explanation for the feature, though the birds aren't closely related at all in taxonomy or geolocation, so there's not much of a biological reason for this connection other than it looks cool. Culturally, however, Starly
It's just a baby!
which are depicted with a single curly hair atop their head in cartoons and anime alike. It's a decently common style for real babies too. When it evolves, this curly baby hair becomes reminiscent of an ahoge. Not an ahegao, I keep almost saying that. An ahoge. It's the exaggerated cowlicks that you often see on anime and manga characters. It's also known as idiot hair. This would especially fit for Staravia, as it's in that edgy, awkward teen phase, most often depicted by anime protagonists. It's still not fully grown up though, and so it doesn't have its mother's permission to dye its hair or grow it out as long as it really wants. Ugh. And that's pretty much it for these two. There's pretty much nothing else to these designs, which is honestly a shame. There's like dozens of starling species out there, many of which are much more colorful and extravagant. Like, take the common starling. It's freaking called the common starling, and yet it has these crazy metallic green and purple feathers in its breeding plumage anyway. This looks way more like a Pokemon than Starly does. And even the white dots it has look like stars in the night sky. Like, how can you make a Pokemon with star in the name and not give it stars all over its design? I mean, technically Staravia does have an upside down star pattern on its face, but hey, original variant is always on the table. We've seen regular Starly in the Scarlet and Violet trailers, but who's to say it won't evolve into a regional variant based on the starlings found on the Iberian Peninsula, like the spotless starling. Yeah, make the edgelord bird even edgier. Forget emo, it's gothic time, dark, like a moonless night. Your only source of light are the dim stars, and probably a flashlight. Staraptor, No. Known as the Raptor Pokemon, it has a savage nature and will courageously challenge foes that are much larger. It never stops attacking, even if injured. Don't mess with this one. While design-wise, it's still almost entirely based on the white-cheeked starling, now it's mixing in some behaviors from larger birds, such as eagles, hawks, and falcons, all of which are classified as raptors, or birds of prey. Interestingly though, in the wild, raptors are starlings' biggest predators. So to protect the flock it's been so dependent on its entire life, Staraptor evolved to literally become the predator of the predator. In terms of appearance, Staraptor's white tail feathers have finally become darker tipped, a phenomenon consistent with aging starlings. But that's pretty much it. Like, just like its pre-evolution, it's just like a bird again. All right. Enough with that. Oh, there is no fixing this. Oh gosh. It's still just a bird, but at least it's a bird with some hair now. The changeable Hawk Eagle's crest is a pretty good match for Staraptor, especially how it appears blowing in the wind. Sure, it's not an exact match, but considering this eagle, or hawk? Yep, it's an eagle. This is the closest we're going to get to an emo cut in the natural world. But let's go back to that Pokedex entry real quick. It will courageously challenge foes that are much larger. It never stops attacking. Have you ever seen small birds attacking bigger birds or other land-based predators? They are bravely, and perhaps a bit stupidly, defending their nests by doing this, keeping the dangerous predators away from their helpless babies. This behavior may be what inspired this part of the Dex entry, which is fun. Now as for cultural inspirations, there's a lot here that you probably wouldn't have noticed at first. For instance, Hokkaido, of course, is the region of Japan that inspired Sinnoh's creation, and its flag was used as a basis to design Staraptor's color scheme. Well, kinda. The flag itself is fairly simple. A 7-point red star with a white outline on a blue background. Staraptor's head could be seen as a 7-pointed star if you count the beak as one of the points. And the red and blue of the flag are represented by the normal and shiny variants, hair dye. Of course, red and blue isn't an incredibly uncommon color scheme, so these connections could just be a coincidence, but the meaning behind these colors, now we're getting somewhere. In the context of this flag, blue represents the sky, where birds fly, and red symbolizes the people's energy. The sky needs no explanation, where birds fly. But when you consider that Staraptor is a bird who grew up to hunt a natural predator of starlies to protect the flock, it's safe to say that they have the energy of the people behind them. But these connections don't just stop at a flag. Did you notice Staraptor's head looks somewhat like a samurai's helmet? Yeah, it closely resembles the helmet of Uesugi Kenshin. Almost all samurai helmets don a head ornament, and in this case, his was shaped like a sun and a crescent moon atop each other, accounting for the devil horn and white circle motif on the Pokemon's forehead. But the helmet isn't the only samurai element of the bird, oh no. Its haircut is based on the chonmage style, a common haircut worn by samurais during the Edo period of Japan. Men would shave the top of their head and put their remaining hair into a top knot that sat atop their scalp, making it easier to look really stupid, but also to wear helmets in combat. That was probably the main thing. Is it okay for me to just call that hairstyle stupid? 'Cause like, this might be offensive. I look like I'm from 2003, it's fine. And you know what? That white circle we originally attributed to a sun does somewhat look like a bald spot under this context, right? And the other two even have this spot as well. And the spot's bigger on the males, which in this context makes perfect sense. It's based on men's fashion, purposefully making themselves balder, giving them bald spots. Though their hair isn't combed down like the chonmage, no. Instead, the chasen-mage hairstyle is pretty fitting for the two pre-evolutions. The style was popular with the teens in the Edo period and looked pretty similar to the chonmage hairstyle with its shaved front, long back look. But the main difference is instead of the hair being folded over the scalp in this top knot, the unshaven hair is pointed straight upwards, held in place using a bamboo T-whisk, which is where the style gets its name in the first place. So there's some really neat stuff when you break down all these walls. But why the samurai connection in the first place? Well, this actually isn't even the first regional bird with some samurai elements in its design. The previous generation's Swellow is the whole reason the move Aerial Ace exists. And at the time, it was pretty much its signature move. The only other Pokemon to learn it naturally was Spearow, another swallow, the kind of bird that they all are. And that's because in Japanese, the move's name is Swallow Return, which is based on a samurai fighting technique called Turning Swallow Cut, due to the sword moving similarly to how swallows attack. So this time, they just went even deeper into birds equals samurai, huh? Not a difficult connection to make either, what with Takagari and all. Takagari is the practice of Japanese falconry. It was a sacred practice. Getting so many of these hairs in my throat. It was a sacred practice with nobles during the Edo period, where they could train birds of prey like eagles and hawks to hunt smaller animals for sport. The practice was especially popular with samurais during wartime, as they provided a secondary food source and a form of entertainment for the soldiers, as there's not really much else you can do during this time period in combat. And again, we definitely know Staraptor hunts smaller Pokemon, so the connection here is pretty strong. I guess Staraptor isn't as boring as I thought, but the other two, yeah, they're just dumb-looking, stupid birds based on boring birds. What do you expect from the 16th normal flying type? I am so glad they started giving regional birds other type variations after 2 more generations of this. Don't you assault me! That's illegal! Just make sure to use your sparrow shoot! He's fine. But do you sparrow shoot? Do you get it?
I'm sure everyone who's sane doesn't get it.
Now hang on. No. That was a good joke. It just came to me. Totally original.
Oh yeah? Just like this next joke, I'm sure.
This is a plushie.
Dear God.
There's more.
No! Look, I've got a little Taillow plush from 2003, back when Taillow was new, and it's kind of beat up and weird. But then I also have a Taillow plush from like 2-3 years ago, from the Sid and Cuties line that they did. Look at the quality difference. There's actually like proper coloring and saturation, and the eyes aren't like bad. The claws are like... claws? Classic Taillow just needs to work on the talon hygiene. But yes, Swellow is a swallow, and a swell swallow at that. Swallows are a small passerine bird found in most areas around the world, including Antarctica. Bet you weren't expecting that one. Taillow's a swallow too, but its name also consists of tail, the most striking aspect of the whole species. Their tails are forked with jetting feathers that they use to fly and navigate in ways that other birds find impossible. Just look at these acute maneuvers! Such precision! Wow! And considering the uniqueness of their coloring, the pair seem to be based on the same species. Blue and red aren't typical combinations in nature, so it should be pretty easy to match the real-life counterpart, right? Well, not exactly. Look, don't get me wrong here, there absolutely is a species that exactly matches this description. But so does another. And another. And another. In fact, the barn swallow, the Pacific swallow, the welcome swallow, the Angolan swallow, the hill swallow, and the red-chested swallow look all like this. 6 in total. And I don't need a repeat of last time. I can't go into every detail of every bird species that looks like a Pokemon as generic as Pidgey, guys. So I only mentioned the few that are closest. And swallows, thus Swellow, is no different. But at least the Kyushu region of Japan, the real-life counterpart to Hoenn, is home to 2 of the species mentioned, the Pacific and barn swallows. So these 2 are probably a big part of what inspired Taillow's creation. Though it's also possible Game Freak just looked at swallows as a whole the same way they did with Pidgey. And that's really pretty much it regarding Taillow's design. But Swellow, you're just getting started. First, have you noticed that nearly every regional bird evolves from a prey species into a predator? That remains true for this line too. It circles the sky in search of prey. It dives at a steep angle as soon as it spots its prey and catches its prey with sharp claws. Aw, yeah, cool raptor stuff. It's like the long-crested eagle or the ornate hawk eagle or something, hence the long hair-like feathers on the back, I suppose, though they appear more reminiscent of a northern lapwing pointing down. But now also consider the swallow-tailed kite. Sure, its color doesn't match at all, but almost everything else it has going on does. The sharp wings, the claws, and the scissored tail are identical to swallows, and even behavior-wise, they are not too far off either. Kites are birds of prey just like hawks and eagles, meaning they're mainly carnivorous and perform various aerial acrobatics when hunting prey. And while on the topic of unrelated fork-tailed birds, the crested tree swift has Swellow's whole crest thing going on, and look, it even matches the color scheme. Kinda. As for the shiny variant, it's actually a lot harder to find a green and orange swallow than you'd think. Really, the closest we have is the violet green swallow and the horribly named golden swallow. It's not gold. I guess a swallow isn't what we're looking for. I'll spit it out then. The resplendent Quetzal. Now we're talking. It's another unrelated fork-tailed bird, and I mean, the red isn't an exact match to Swellow's orange, but it's pretty darn close overall. Caught it. Now these, yes, they are tail feathers, but broaden your horizons a little bit, man. Don't just see them as feathers, see them as tails for a moment. Twin tails, to be exact, as in the twin tails seen on F-18s and other similar fighter jets. And if you think about it, Swellow's whole posture is pretty much the same as a fighter jet, right? And it swells itself up to try and appear intimidating, as any strong military or air force should be. Heck, the red pattern on its chest is shaped like a chevron, a shape commonly used to denote military rankings, including Japan's air defense force. And plus, many of their jets are blue. Now, I bet you're wondering why these planes even have these to begin with, aside from just looking really cool, that is. Well, it's the same reason that swallows and other birds we mentioned have forked tails too. It's deluxe aerial mobility action. Planes must be as mobile and precise as possible during combat, so these tails allow the aircraft to turn at angles that would otherwise be impossible with a single tail. And you can really see these in action at air shows like what the Blue Angels do. And they're also blue. And on a side note, did you know they refuel these things while airborne? Look at them thread the needle here. Again, deluxe aerial mobility action. It's so cool. Similarly, swallows refuel while flying too, to keep in motion and keep safe from predators while going down for a drink of water.
Which swelling up your chest to look all bigger and tougher can do too.
And I want to go ahead and go back to its strange head feathers. It took me a while to pin this down, but aside from those birds mentioned, it could also pull from similar hairstyles and how they are often portrayed in media, especially Japanese media. We find similar haircuts on characters like Matengard from Phoenix Wright, a speedy action star who cares a lot about his looks, just like these bird Pokemon. There's also Nishikiyama from Yakuza, a tough businessman Yakuza boss who spends over an hour per day perfecting his hair, cares a lot about his looks, and has just like this exact same facial expression, I might add. There's the Raikage from Naruto, who are similarly associated with speed and toughness, and Swellow does have the guts ability. That's all about being tough. It's almost like a brushed mullet, which was popular in Japan in the 80s through the early 2000s, and is known to be associated with the strong businessman type. And heck, even outside of Japan, this haircut has similar associations. The MCU's Loki has it, and he's a big tough villain who's also prideful. Yeah? But is Swellow supposed to be kinda prideful of its looks and speed? It does have a dex entry that states it's very conscientious about the upkeep of its glossy wings, which could pull from that hair trope. Or maybe it just has hair feathers like this to insinuate speed. Think like Sonic spikes. And I mean, when you go fast in like a convertible car, your hair does fly back, but I just can't help feel like there's a connection here. I mean, the facial expression, right? But I also feel like it might have something to do with samurai. If you watched our video covering the Staraptor line, you'll remember we briefly discussed how Aerial Ace was basically Swellow's signature move in Gen 3, and it's referred to as Swallow Return in Japan. But now that we're actually on the Swallow Pokemon, it'd be illegal not to go into more detail. Sasaki Kojiro was an ancient and powerfully skilled swordsman rumored to roam the Honshu and Kyushu regions during the Edo period of Japan. It's still up for debate whether he actually existed or not, but what we do know is that Swallow Return was supposedly his signature blade technique, and it was said to mimic the motion of a swallow's tail during some acrobatic flight. It involved a swift downward cut immediately followed by an upward slash. The maneuver was so quick it could strike down a bird mid-flight, and that's why the move never misses in Pokemon. It's just too darn fast! This circles right back around to Swellow's hair and tails. In this context, you could see its tails as the two swords samurai would carry, and the hair then could be a simplified or modernized version of the chonmage, especially before the top part is folded back over the top.
Abrupt transition! You gotta work on smoothing your outros, man.
Oh, okay. Is the next bit about Pidove finally?
Yeah.
Dear God. I'll grab the tissues. Question! How do you take one of the most common birds in the modern world and make an interesting Pokemon out of it? The answer, you don't. You make Pidove. Now honestly, Pidove is kinda cute, but it's the other two that are abominations. I mean, Pidove on its own, it's a fluffy, plump, small bird that's both a pigeon and a dove. A Pidove, if you will. There's not really much of a difference between the two, though. Both birds are grouped in the Columbidae family, and they're cousins. Some even say that they're literally the same bird but different colors. And that's pretty much it. No, really, there's not much here. During an interview for Black and White's release, Ken Sugimori stated the design philosophy for Pidove was to create as simple of a Pokemon as possible. So it really is just a cartoon pigeon. The only pinch of spice that they added was the heart pattern across the breast. Seems a bit random, but it's based on a pun. In Japan, they address both pigeons and doves as hato, which sounds a lot like the English word for heart, doesn't it? Hato? Heart? Especially if you were saying heart with a hard Japanese accent. Clever? Therefore, Game Freak made a heart hato. Really simple, but still really cool. Yeah, I'll say that, I'll give it to him. But even though Japan uses a generic term, Pidove is specifically based on a rock pigeon. This is the species you'll see when visiting almost any modern city across the planet. When visiting them, just try not to get pooped on, because I got pooped on right on the forehead when I was like 10, visiting San Francisco with my family. It's unpleasant. Go back to where you came from, or so help me! These animals come in a variety of colors, from black to white, but it's not always black and white when your hato knows what's right. The gray morph is what matches Pidove exceptionally well, and I don't think it should come as a shock when I say the Unova region is based in America, primarily New York City, so modeling the city-based region's bird after the literal city bird is a no-brainer. A bird-brainer, if you will. But I bet you're wondering why these guys flooded the concrete jungle in the first place, though. Most animals generally steer clear of humanity as much as possible, but pigeons, they're eating out of our hands. Literally, and not always voluntarily on our parts. Well, there's two main reasons why they're here, and there, and everywhere. The first is because we put them here. Despite being rampant within American cities, it's not like they were here to begin with. No, their native range expands the rocky cliffs of African and southern Eurasian coastlines, and then they were brought to European cities as a food source. Squab is actually pretty good. And it's the fancy term for pigeon meat, because if you just tell someone, oh, you're eating pigeon, it sounds lame and not very classy. You sound like a homeless, sad guy. Well, you say squab, oh, now it's fancy food. Then the 1600s happened. European colonizers were moving to the New World and brought their pigeons for the same reason they brought pigs and cows and horses. But like all livestock, a few inevitably escaped and started breeding within the villages and towns of early America. But what gave pigeons the edge over other introduced species was their ability to not only survive, but thrive off of human leftovers. For other bird species, basic human commodities offer little nutritional value, so they were forced to either move into the woods or die off. But urban pigeons eat breadcrumbs like superfood. Unfortunately, it still isn't good for them by any means, but the point is that they can survive off of it. And plus, they are called rock pigeons because they nest in sheer and rocky cliff faces, quite akin to the tall buildings and bridges and concrete jungles we humans build. And with no major predators outside of alley cats and the occasional city hawk, the species was destined to thrive. Especially considering their intelligence. They're among the smartest birds on Earth, after all, if you can believe it. Their pattern recognition abilities are said to be on par with dogs and even beyond some cats. They've been trained to recognize all 26 letters, over 1,000 words, and matching paintings to artists, just to name a few of their feats. And their intelligence doesn't stop here either. Pigeons have an acute sense of direction and location. They're able to navigate back to their nest even when extremely far away geographically, even if you move it away from that point in a closed box so it can't see where it's going. Yeah, it'll still make its way home, and this innate ability is what allows humanity to use homing pigeons. In dark times of war, soldiers would bring pigeons across enemy lines, and if ever caught in a pickle, a note would be tied to the pigeon's leg, and it was then released, allowing them to fly back home with the important message. This method of messaging came in handy throughout the early to mid-1900s when it was regularly used, and you might think it's outdated. But in some parts of the world, it is faster than the internet. In South Africa in 2009, a carrier pigeon famously carried a 4GB SD card 60 miles from the location of the internet server to the computer that was trying to download stuff. And they started that download at the same time they released the pigeon. Guess who won? Yeah. and won by a lot. By the time the pigeon reached its destination, the download was only 4% complete. Yeah, that pigeon could have transferred that data over a dozen times in the time it took one guy to just download it. And notably, this was on, at the time, South Africa's biggest internet provider. What are they doing? Come on. 2009? More like 2000 wine. And I would love to give you so many more historical examples of these birds in actions, but we still have a lot to get through. But if you want to learn more about real-life uses for homing pigeons, go check out How a Pigeon Won World War II on Biodaverse's channel. A link to their video is in the description and at the end of this video, and also he wrote this video, so definitely a good watch. Now, looking at the line's Pokedex entries, this amazing ability is referenced by one of Tranquil's, Pidove's evolution. It can return to its trainer's location regardless of the distance separating them. It's literally a homing pigeon, but that's where the connection between these two ends. Luckily, Sugimori gives us another lead on this Pokemon's design as well. They based its body patterns off of the Oriental Turtle Dove. And again, we have a name pun. Yes! This one is a bit more complicated though, so to severely simplify things, the Oriental Turtle Dove's Japanese name is pronounced, roughly, Kijibato, which translates to pheasant pigeon. Therefore, here we have an in-between of a pheasant and a pigeon. The first and third stage of the evolutionary lines. How fun. The Oriental Turtle Dove comparisons mostly stop at name and markings though. Tranquil's primary and shiny colors aren't accounted for by it, so maybe there's another pigeon it draws inspiration from too. Especially since that shiny is so weird, it looks like it fell in a vat of radioactive glow stick acid. That's a thing now. But no, there are actually a few species of green pigeons across the planet. Take the pink-necked green pigeon from Vietnam. Holy cowbird! No wonder why most things in nature are dull grays and browns. This guy stole all the color! It looks like sherbet. And they can also be pure green, which is what shiny Tranquil is, but oh gosh, wow, I can't stop looking at it. Okay, back on subject. Technically, regular Tranquil could be a rock pigeon again as well, but what if it's not? Pheasants aren't related to pigeons, so there could be something else. And there absolutely is. It's probably the closest bird we have to a quail in design. I mean, hello, tranquil, as in a tranquil quail. It's got a quill. And just like the turtle dove, quails can act as an in-between for doves and pheasants too. For starters, they're directly related to pheasants as both a part of the Pheasantidae family, and while pigeons aren't included in this family, there are Columbidae named after quails, so that has to count for something. In terms of color, plenty of species could fill the role too. Gray isn't a very distinct color for birds. However, the mountain quail is probably the closest. This waddly-doo hanging from its forehead is what drives home this connection for me though. The plume is the most unique feature of the quail family, typically a droopy head feather resembling the one seen on old American flappers. Yet, the mountain quail wears its plume differently, looking like a pair of spikes, and so does Tranquil. The spiked mohawk was a prime punk style Americans wore back in the 80s, and the back of Tranquil's hair resembles a mullet of sorts, a hairstyle originating from France, but has since become synonymous with edgier American culture. Just think of how many American action movie stars from the 80s and 90s had this hair. I'd say it's a good explanation. Even better if Tranquil wasn't such a hippie. Enough with this peace mumbo-jumbo. Doves, symbols of peace. Where's your inner rage?
Don't you want to let your demons out? Don't you want to run down the hallway with your scissors pointed out?
The American 90s revived the mullet to a wider audience, both for men and women, and is distinct from the 80s version of the haircut by its puffiness at the bottom. Again, just like Tranquil. The 90s are generally looked back upon as one of the most peaceful decades in modern humanity, being known as a period of peace and prosperity. In Japan specifically, it was the 80s, being towards the end of their biggest economic boom ever, which is often referred to as the Japanese economic miracle. The US had a similar thing going on in the 90s, thanks in part to the beginning of the internet's mainstreamification. So let's just say there's a reason the virtual reality in the Matrix takes place in the 90s, one of America's most stable and prosperous time periods. And it's looked back upon even more fondly because of how suddenly all that peace and prosperity ended. Shortly after the 90s ended. I'm so sorry. 9/11 jokes are just plain wrong. Though it is fitting that this is also New York City. Actually, there's a common theory that the recently ruined part of Unova, the desert with the ruins that's right next to the city, is a reference to Ground Zero, but that's not the point here. The point here is this Pokédex entry. Many people believe that deep in the forest where Tranquil live, there is a peaceful place where there is no war. This is supposedly a reference to a utopia featured in a series of poems by Kenji Miyazawa, which exists in a fictional world called Ihatov, which is notable because Ihatov may have been a part of what influenced Tranquil's name in Japanese, Hatobo. If it were truly a utopia though, Tranquil would not evolve into Unfezant, a rather unpleasant pheasant Pokémon. Pokédex. People will sit up and take notice if you become the trainer of one. Yeah, no kidding, because this thing is ugly as heck. You must have a screw loose if you want this as your pet. I mean, clearly, it's a pheasant, a medium-sized game bird that, just like the rock pigeon, was brought over from Eurasia for food purposes. More specifically, it's based on the Siamese fireback. A unique detail about this Pokemon is that it is the only regional bird to have distinct sexual dimorphism, a phenomenon in which males and females of a species have distinct and obvious differences between the two outside of sex organs. Think like the mane on a lion or the tusks of elephants. The fireback has this as well. Here we see that the males look like, well, this, and the gals are just sort of a rusty brown color. Just kinda... yeah, that's a bird. Though the green part on male Unfezant is a bit tougher to explain since the firebacks only have greenish-blue undertones that match a lot closer to the shiny variant. But it does match the green seen on the head of the male ring-necked pheasant, the most widespread species across America. And aside from being gray with colorful underpants, the marbled and stripy patterns on the Pokemon are reflected by this animal too. You just gotta mix them together a little bit and boom! You got everything! However, cool real-world origins will not make up for the fact that its anime cry sounds like this. Oh, also, I did want to note that the Pokédex mentions that the females are the superior flyers in terms of stamina, while the males exceed in speed. In some species of bird, the females are larger than the males, meaning they have larger and stronger wings to aid in flight. The stronger you are, the more endurance you usually have, and generally, smaller things are faster than the larger ones. Wait, no. No, do not believe this bullfinch! This is a common logical fallacy. In reality, the larger birds in the same species tend to be the same speed or faster than the smaller ones. But I can at least understand why someone might think this. But what I don't understand is why they assigned this to the pheasant, as this observation doesn't actually apply to them in the slightest. Best theory I have just relates to the many more showy species of bird, like various birds of paradise, where the males get wacky with their excessive show feathers. Those obviously would increase drag, making it slightly harder for them to fly as swiftly and efficiently as the females. Think like the male Unfezant's red masquerade mask. Its exceptionally long, flangly wobble-doo bits are like fancy feathers found on the King of Saxony bird of paradise, for instance. Then the mask part itself is almost like a waddle, a term that you would likely associate with the leathery hangy thingy on a turkey, but for the record, that is actually a snood. The waddle is the old man saggy skin neck thingy that it has going on. But it's not exclusive to turkeys. Plenty of birds have waddles on various parts of their face, including the mask shape on pheasants. The waddle serves various purposes for various birds, including, but not limited to,
voice amplification, heat regulation, intimidation, sexual maturity, attracting mates, securing testosterone, predator evasion, territorial defense, keeping clean when digging, especially when digging their faces deep into the bodies of their prey,
and much, much more. Like, looking cool. It looks really cool, right? You know, I bet the Pokemon Company only really incorporated that last point into its design, which is why we have the Masquerade mask. It's that little pinch of spice again. It's just a pheasant with a mask, just a pinch of detail. It is kind of reminiscent of the Fireback's head feathers, though, just longer. And when I look at it, it sort of does look like Unfezant is wearing a fancy suit, doesn't it? Its neck ends in a point like a V-neck of a tuxedo, almost like it's going to attend a masquerade, yeah? Masquerades were traditionally held in 18th century Europe, and the first recorded one was in London. And hold on, That's the third instance of cultural influence not originating from American culture. And yes, there is a lot of cultural influence not originating from American culture found in this bird. And yeah, they probably did that on purpose. You've probably realized that American culture is basically a big melting pot of other cultures from across the world, and all throughout history that's been the case. Well, for as long as it's been named America anyway. And considering the pheasant, quail, and pigeon were all adopted from other parts of the world as well, it seems that they, too, these Pokemon, were probably brought to Unova. And thus they have remnants of other cultural influences within them. Have you ever fallen in love? Pidove once did. It's forgetful and not very bright, but many trainers love it anyway for its friendliness and sincerity. Where people go, these Pokemon follow. Humanity showed kindness, and for the first time in its young life, Pidove knew what it felt like to bond with another. It's a love fool. With its heart on its chest, it's still feeling the butterflies in early relationships and making mistakes like forgetting instructions out of nervousness. Not to mention, its shiny is based on the diamond dove. Hearts and diamonds are the universal symbols of love, no? Pidove acts like a young soul still in the honeymoon phase, and after a while, it evolves into tranquil. It is now less anxious and in a more established state in its relationship. No longer does it feel all the emotions that come with a new relationship, but it remains just as loyal. It can return to its trainer's location, regardless of the distance separating them. Truly, this Pokemon feels secure with its trainer. It could live its whole life like this. It is at peace. But sometimes, things don't work out. Some point after evolving yet again, Unfezant and its trainer separated. And it wasn't from the Pokemon's end. It had been stuffed away in a PC, where it has remained since 2010. Once a young and happy soul, now a husk of null emotion, closed off from the world, appearing cranky to those who do not know its story. It now hides its emotions behind a shield, behind a mask.
I wear a mask with a smile for hours at a time.
Do not fret. It is no longer in pain. It has gotten used to this abandonment. While the common belief is that its name means it is an unpleasant pheasant, it could also be interpreted as an unfazed pheasant. Unfazed by the betrayal that once caused pain and shock. Now, it just feels numb. But which is worse? You probably reinforce this poor Pokemon's beliefs. To most Pokemon fans, Unfezant is by far their least favorite of the regional birds. It is a total outcast. Of the regional birds, it's the only one that is not a bird of prey. Rather, it is commonly eaten itself. It doesn't have any special forms or competitive relevance, nor does it have anything particularly cool about its design. Game Freak designed it to be an outlier compared to the others, and they did it on purpose. They intentionally designed it to be mundane and, to an extent, even repulsive. It was already hurt by one trainer, so what's a few tens of millions more? However, it doesn't have to be this way. They will never let themselves feel close to anyone other than their trainers. Of course, we just went over this, but who's to say a new trainer couldn't adopt them? A new eager trainer who won't judge it on competitive relevance or striking demeanor. Just someone to warm its cold, warm-blooded heart. Perhaps you could be that trainer, the trainer that comes and saves this poor Unfezant to allow it to feel love once again.
So, are you gonna finally use one?
What? No, ew, that ugly thing? Nah, it deserves love, but I'm not gonna give it.
Talonflame?
More like talent? Lame. So I recently did a video covering some of the most unique names in Pokemon, and I don't want to give you too many spoilers on that one, but I can assure you, Talonflame was nowhere near that list. Honestly, it's probably the worst name they've ever come up with. In fact, it was featured in our other recent video talking about the worst names in Pokemon. Imagine that! It's like they didn't even try. Like, even its Japanese name, Fiero, which is a combination of fire, arrow, and sparrow, is better, in English, than Talonflame. I do get why they didn't stick with it, though. It's too close to Fiero, and Talonflame is in no way a sparrow, but at least it's a portmanteau. Why not Farigal? Pyregreen? hot. I could do this all day. And it's not like that stopped them from doing Cub Fu after doing Cub Chew. Well, at least Fletchling and Fletchinder have pretty okay names. We'll get to the etymology later, but looking at their general appearance, we have a robin and a robin. No, really. Despite being radically different in appearance, both the fire robin and American robin act as great fits for the pair, respectively. Admittedly, this is a bit of a cheat since American robins aren't true robins, but a species of thrush, a group of medium-sized songbirds found throughout the world. And the name itself was due to a lapse in understanding by European settlers. They noticed that the bird had a bright red breast, and it's just like the European robins back home, so to them, it was the same bird. Yeah, it's a European robin, except it's in America, so let's call it an American robin. Wow. Yeah, people weren't that bright back then. The flame robin, on the other hand, is a true robin, and I don't think I need to explain why a bird called the flame robin would inspire Fletchling. What's more surprising, though, is that there's another type of robin that's an even better fit, the Japanese robin. Wow. Forget Starly and forget Taillow, that's literally just a Pokemon. What's with all these regional birds being just literally an animal? When comparing this robin's behavior to the behavior of Fletchinder outlined in the Pokedex, both are extremely territorial, and both will raise their tails as a warning flag and ferociously peck at anything that gets too close to its nest. And this behavior is so ingrained within Fletchling that they brought it to Smash Bros of all places. Like, in my friend group, we literally always screamed when a Fletchling came out. Legitimately the scariest Pokemon in the game. But of course, for a big muscular guy, like myself, I barely, feel it, go! Yep, not a thing. And even though I mentioned that the American robin isn't related to the other robins, don't you dare, it behaves similarly, as well. So much so, that the red breast serves no courtship purposes at all. Instead, it acts solely as a warning flag. Don't you even think about it. But just like the fire robin, the American robin isn't the top contender for Fletchinder. Take a look at these. These are waxwings, and they are a family of crested songbirds with small red or yellow tips on their primary feathers that appear dipped in the wax used to seal letters and envelopes. Like, think of wax candles with the little flame on the tip, like these little flying birds with their little flaming tips. Yeah, fire flying type. I do spot me many similarities between these good and deep cut origins. But as for Talonflame, all we need to do is bring attention to its Pokedex entries. When attacking prey, it can reach speeds of up to 310 miles per hour. It finishes its prey off with a colossal kick. Its favorite foods are Wingull and Pikipek. It attacks with a powerful kick and grasps them firmly in its talons. Oh yeah! We have ourselves a clear-cut peregrine falcon! Not only are their appearances strikingly similar, but this speed bit, now that's the cherry on top of this flaming chicken sundae. Peregrines aren't just the fastest birds on the planet, they're the fastest animal, period. It can't quite reach 310 miles per hour, but it does clock in at an impressive 240, making it faster than NASCARs. Though, granted, they don't reach these speeds fully on their own. Rather, they use gravity, falling with style and all that. It flies really, really high up and then begins a dive with its very aerodynamic body. First, the bird will forcefully flap downwards to increase the acceleration, and then it tucks its wings into its body to reduce drag. And that's basically it. It practically ejects itself out of the sky. And as you'd expect, the purpose behind this is to hunt prey. It's truly genius if you think about it. On top of the insane speed requiring anything it's after to have incredible reaction times to avoid it, this strategy also eliminates unnecessary noise caused by flapping wings. Meaning, the only way to avoid getting hit is to see the falcon falling from the sky, register that you're the target, and still have time to move, or hope it misses somehow. Which rarely happens thanks to their immaculate eyes. And when they reach their prey, they will either grasp it with its long and agile talons, or it will take a more stylish approach. Falcon kick! Whoa! It just used its speed to break the duck's little neck! But speaking of ducks, what if I told you there was another bird that fit the bill, even more than the peregrine?
Seems like impossible watch time bait. How could there be another bird out there that shares even more similarities with the fast and French bird Pokemon than the fastest bird on Earth that happens to live in France? There's no way Talonflame isn't a falcon.
Technically, you're correct. We're now dealing with another species of falcon, the brown falcon from Australia. On the surface, sure, it looks like Talonflame, but most falcons already have this spotted, striped body with tear-like eye pattern thing going on, so that's not saying much, like it's a falcon. But wait until you hear about their hunting strategy. The Australian outback is a scorching, desert-like, scrubby climate that sees regular brush fires popping up throughout the dry season. And though it is a regular occurrence in the region, it provides very little benefit to any species other than pyrophytic plants and animals that find new food sources or homes after the fire subsides. But one notable exception to this is the brown falcon. These guys thrive off of fire. While fire is a nightmare for small rodents and marsupials fleeing the blaze, this provides the perfect hunting opportunity for surveying raptors to swoop in. But they don't just wait for the fire to bring out the food. Oh, no. In what is probably the most metal hunting method I've ever heard of, they will purposefully spread the fire to areas it naturally would have never reached by grabbing a stick, flying just above the flames to purposefully catch the end of the stick on fire and airdrop it over unburned shrubs where it thinks its food lives. And this right here, this fire-wielding behavior has rightfully earned the brown falcon the nickname of the Australian Firehawk. And just like peregrines and most birds of prey for that matter, their main weapon is their talons, which is why it's such a significant part of its crummy name. And hey, while we're on the topic of names again, let me uphold my promise from before and revisit Fletchling and Fletchinder. Each member of the evolutionary line has these distinct pointed arrows on their tails, growing a new one each time it evolves. This almost definitely is done to signify the increase in speed each evolution gets. But when breaking down their names, you get a Fletcher Fletchling and a Cindering Fletch. For those unaware, a fletch is the feathery part on the tail end of an arrow. Looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? And the arrow connections don't just stop at the fletch. Remember that poking trauma we faced a bit ago? Under this new context, can't we interpret their beaks as the arrowheads on the arrow and their big tail feathers as the fletch? Now, this is going to sound really stupid, but if you think about it, arrows are kind of the weapon equivalent of birds, are they not? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you say it out loud, it just sounds right. Arrows, the birds of weapons. Still not convinced? Well, what if we were to set them on fire? The arrows, not the poor little birds. What if we were to set the arrows on fire? Flaming arrows away! By dipping arrows in tar, armies from almost every nation across Eurasia used these weapons. During their first iteration, they were mostly used as an intimidation tactic rather than serving an actual wartime advantage. In some cases, they could be used as marker points so that firing armies could see whereabouts their arrows were landing while still in the dark and could then readjust their shots accordingly. But most of the time, flaming arrows would burn out before even hitting the ground. That is, until they were used in conjunction with the very bird-shaped crossbow, which allowed them to be fired longer distances. They also modified the arrow and bolt designs by twisting the wiring to create a basket or cage structure where the flammable material could be packed into, and thus the arrow would burn longer and also have a harder time being put out. And doesn't this black cage look kinda like closed talons? Or is that just me and I'm grasping at straws with my on-fire talons? Well, this new design let them finally be used as a useful distant fire-starting tool to destroy wooden structures like towers and ships. And yes, in the Middle Ages, the French used these weapons too, though they didn't invent them or advance them in any meaningful way. Though it is worth noting that during the 14th century, right in the middle of the medieval period, Islamic forces were quite fond of French crossbows. In fact, they called them Cos al Francha, this word, and it directly translates to Frankish bow. Oh yeah, the French were known as the Franks first, since they were always a bunch of wieners. But yes, the Franks used crossbows so much that many outsiders referred to crossbows as Frankish bows, even though the Franks didn't invent them. That honor goes to the Chinese in the 4th century BC. But it's not the first time non-French items have been assigned to the French. I mean, you got, what, mayonnaise, toast, fries, keys.
Toucannon screeching yes.
Alola! That's how they say hello in Pokemonese, in Alola. It's a bit weird though. It's like walking up to somebody and saying, Connecticut! Pikipek fills the role of the common regional bird in the Generation 7 games Pokemon Sun and Moon. It was actually the very first Gen 7 Pokemon ever shown off too. Now, we didn't know its name at the time, but back when Sun and Moon was first revealed, we got to see this during the montage of concept art and early screenshots of the games. It's clearly a wireframe of the aforementioned bird, and to my knowledge is the only time a Pokemon has been revealed in this format. The entire line's designs are fairly simple to explain on the surface, but I do remember all those years ago, when we learned about its evolutions, there were plenty of people wondering, yo,
Why is a woodpecker become a toucan?
Like a remora becomes an octopus, but a bird renowned for its beak becomes a different bird renowned for its beak, and that's strange to you? Granted, every other regional bird Pokemon up until this point has remained relatively the same as it evolves, just getting bigger and maybe adding an element or two. Always starting off as an adorable Borb and slowly becoming something more similar to a bird of prey, but generally a similarly colored bird of prey with similar attributes. Even though they're different species, you can still clearly see the process of evolution at play with all of the other ones. But Toucannon! That's a mighty fine leap, my friend. So what gives? Well, I will tell you and explain everything there is to know about them, starting of course with Pikipek, the woodpecker Pokemon. Thanks, Pokédex. I had no idea. Most species of woodpecker have this general black, white, and red color scheme going on, so the Pokemon's coloring is by no means unique, but two in particular do stand out. The first being the pileated woodpecker, America's largest woodpecker species, and it shares a lot of general characteristics with Pikipek, including the red crest, a trait not seen in many species of the bird. As you might expect, this is used to attract mates, though in most species where red is an indicator of a specimen being male, this isn't the case for pileateds. Instead, males' stripes are red, whereas the females are black, meaning that this is where their sexual dimorphism is displayed. And since Pikipek doesn't have any such differences, they chose not to incorporate these stripes into the design at all. Instead, they chose to base Pikipek's face colors off of the white-headed woodpecker. You can see these cute curly black swirls around the cheeks and neck, and going beyond just the face, you can see that they also share white on the underside of the wings. This species is also exclusive to America. However, it's important to note that neither can be found in Hawaii, which is what Alola is based on. In fact, Hawaii is home to no native species of woodpecker, and the only introduced species that have established a sizable population is the northern flicker, and it looks nothing like Pikipek. On the other hand, the Akiapolaau is often referred to as the Hawaiian woodpecker, but it's actually a type of finch that, again, looks nothing like Pikipek. Knowing this, why would they put a woodpecker in Alola? Oh well, must be a fluke.
Hey, you want to know a secret? Pikipek evolves into Toucannon, and get this, the reason it's called Toucannon, it's a toucan cannon. Crazy, I know. It certainly has the cannon motifs going on, like just look at that tail. It's a fuse in the process of being burnt. And how about that bill? Very reminiscent of one of those old video game power meters. You can even see the progression of the bars throughout the evolution line. And Toucannon is just the first to actually incorporate this aesthetic into practicality. During its attack animation, its entire bill becomes red with power, explosively launching seeds with enough power to pulverize boulders, according to its Pokédex anyway. This attack doesn't come without cost though. Toucannon loses its charge bars and must go through a cooldown before launching another attack. This cooldown is practically instant though, so we rarely get to see its uncharged form. Speaking of which, the Pokemon is practically identical to a Toko Toucan. Like, it's not just the bill, the blue feet and eyes and the red tail feathers, even the yellow cheek patches look pretty darn close to its yellow eyelores, which is this part of the bird. They really just took a regular toucan and they made it into a gun. Really, the name pun is so obvious and so perfect that it's probably the reason why this bird artillery connection was made. They came up with the name first. I mean, that might not be true, but it sure does seem like it. But on another note, it does possess another ability that is much more founded in reality. When it battles, its beak heats up. The temperature can easily exceed 212 degrees Fahrenheit, causing severe burns when it hits. 212 Fahrenheit seems like a very specific number, and that's because its equivalent in Celsius is an even 100, which just so happens to be water's boiling point. Yeah, no wonder it looks peeved all the time. The thing is literally hot-headed. And sure, for that connection to reality, cannons do reach extreme temperatures when firing, but within the last 15 years, scientists now understand toucan bills aid in body temperature regulation, similar to how thermal radiators work. Most toucans live in tropical South American environments, which tend to be on the warmer side, so their bill radiates heat, allowing the bird to cool down. You can really tell when looking at the bird through an infrared camera, which can show you how hot things are. And hey, this really cool thermal color scheme could explain Toucannon's shiny colors, though there are some blue-billed toucans out
out there as well. Both are suitable explanations. What doesn't have a suitable explanation, though, is why there's a toucan in Hawaii. Unlike the woodpecker that has a few lookalikes and non-native species populating the islands, there are no toucans outside of captivity anywhere near Hawaii. And this begs a huge question. Why is a woodpecker-toucan evolution line one of the first you're introduced to within the region? Especially as it's not super fitting. Well, the truth is closer to home than you may think. Hawaii is super isolated from every other area on Earth. To put into perspective how far away other landmasses are, California is located over 2,300 miles to the east, while the Philippines are over 5,000 miles to the west. As such, the island's ecosystem is entirely unique to anywhere else on Earth. Of the 16,000 documented native species, over half are only naturally found in Hawaii. Its Ultramoon Dex entry even mentions toucannons are brought to wedding ceremonies as a good luck charm, implying the Pokemon needed to be imported from somewhere else, a common way invasive species are spread on Earth. So, okay, yeah, I can buy that. A toucan sort of fits the Alolan tropical motif, but why the woodpecker? There's nothing particularly tropical about these birds. In fact, why did a woodpecker turn into a toucan to begin with? To answer this, let's address a point I didn't mention with Pikipek before. Its name. Pikipek is a combination of the words peck and pick, both signature behaviors of woodpeckers and birds, and Pick-a-day. Before explaining what this means, first we need to talk about the Linnaean hierarchical system. We won't get into too much detail about it because it quickly gets very complicated, but what you need to know is that it's a system created by scientists to group organisms with other similar organisms. There are 7 different tiers of classification, ranging from the most broad, kingdom, to the most specific, species. Here's all 7 tiers. Pause the video if you want to see them all, but just know that the important thing is that when comparing 2 organisms, the closer they are to the species tier, the more closely related they are. For example, humans are a part of the great apes family, which includes other species such as chimpanzees and gorillas. Humans are swallowing their own spit and dying from it. Okay, humans are also a part of the primates order, the tier just above family, which further expands the relationship net to other species such as the spider monkey. However, since spider monkeys are not a part of the great apes family, we're closer cousins to chimpanzees than to spider monkeys. It's pretty straightforward, and in our case today, Pick-a-day is the family of the woodpecker. There's also a few other pretty obscure birds in this family, such as wrynecks, but woodpeckers are quite lonely in this party, and that's why we expand our reach to the Piciforms order. Again, most of these birds are fairly unknown to the general public, but there are a few that you may have heard of, like the toucan. Yep, woodpeckers and toucans are long-lost second cousins. Both are Piciforms. Pikipek is a Pikiform. Toucannon is a Pikiform. They are 2 lonely birds in a world of 4th and 5th cousins, separated at birth, reconnected by the largest media franchise in the world. It just brings a tear to my eye. Oh, Trumbeak! I almost forgot all about you. Let's make this quick. Appearance-wise, Trumbeak is quite literally one of those in-between Pokemons that fans will often design, and I suppose it would be a tad awkward to have Pikipek gain all of these new design aspects at once, so I totally get why they needed this middle stage. But still, it feels weird. It's not particularly based on any of these other Pick-a-days, but oh well, I guess they just didn't fit the bill. But its name is the combination of the words trumpet and beak, and it's additionally classified as the Bugle Beak Pokemon, meaning this Pokemon has some major musical vibes going on. Its beak does somewhat look like a horn flipped the other way, and its Ultra Sun Pokedex entry mentions it's capable of producing over 100 different sounds, doing so by curling the tip of its beak. Noisy birds aren't anything special, however, but interestingly, most produce a sound with their vocal cords, not their beaks. Vocal cords are behind the beaks. However, there are some exceptions to this, like woodpeckers and toucans. Woodpeckers communicate with one another through drumming and drilling, noises created by knocking their beak against a tree in a rapid and rhythmic motion. Toucans also have similar behaviors. They use their vocal cords to portray certain emotions, but also rely heavily on bill clicks and clatters just as much, if not more, earning them the title of one of the noisiest birds in the world. Of course, though, no bird is capable of curling their beak the way Trumbeak is. Hummingbirds can slightly bend their beaks when opening their mouths, but not to this degree. Instead, since one of the line's gimmicks is firing seeds, rocks, and really anything small and round, they designed the Pokemon so that it spits seeds in a similar fashion to mammals. with lips. And then they threw in the trumpet motifs to give it a musical sound of its own. We got Pikipek and Toucannon on the percussion, Trumbeak on the trumpet, and me on the kazoo, the only instrument I'm cool enough to use. Come on, fellas. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, stop. God.
Yeah! Oh, I guess the sound was already over. And I guess it wasn't the worst sound you ever made. Remember the entire Wiglet video?
I really try not to, but can I talk about the Corviknight line now?
Fine.
Okay, well, when it comes to Rookity, Corvisquire, and Corviknight, these are all really solid designs. I mean, we finally got a Blue Jay Pokemon with Corvisquire, one of the coolest North American yardbirds out there.
Actually, it's a Stellar's Jay, not a Blue Jay.
Okay, what's the difference?
Look at him, stupid.
I suppose the Blue Jay has too much white in its feathers. The Stellar's Jay, on the other hand, has a completely black head, except for these white eyebrows and blue patterns on its forehead. Just like Corvisquire.
Also, Blue Jays inhabit all of North America, but Stellar's Jays are exclusive to the Rocky Mountains and British Columbia.
Galar is based on Great Britain, but that's not the same place. And even if you wanted to use that superficial argument, aren't there plenty of Blue Jays in New England?
Enough with the technicalities.
You are very frustrating, but I guess you could have a point about the coloring.
I'm out.
And if we're straying from a Blue Jay, the black-throated magpie jay also looks pretty similar. Sure, appearance-wise it's closer to the Blue Jay, and it has this crazy long tail none of the other Pokemon do, but the one thing that puts it apart is the chin strap beard it has going on. Corvisquire's beard isn't as large or magnificent as Corviknight's, but since the rest of its body has yet to grow the dark, metallic feathers, it's far easier to see the beard contrasted against the blue body. Though, it could also be a hood. The second part of its name implies that it's a squire, the apprentice to a more experienced knight. They sometimes wear this chainmail hood when in battle, as they haven't upgraded to the whole helmet yet. In a way, this is a training helmet for a novice, a rookie, if you will, a Rookidee. Rookidee is a fun one. Its name implies that it's a rookie chickadee, and it's kind of true. Its shiny form is definitely based on the black-capped and Carolina chickadee from North America. It's hard to say which one they were looking at when designing the Pokemon, though, since they're kind of identical? Like, really? I've seen more extreme sexual dimorphism in a single species. How did they decide these were different species? That is not a question I am qualified to answer, but what I can say is that they're both a part of the Paridae family, a group of small passerine birds found mostly in the Northern Hemisphere and Africa. Chickadees chickadees and the other bird that inspired Rookidee are both a part of this family, but what is that other bird? Why, the Eurasian blue tit, of course. Now you know why we started with Corvisquire. YouTube bots might think this video is about something totally different if I started off by talking about tits. But even if we know that Rookidee is a tit, I bet you're still wondering why that is. Tits and jays aren't in the same family, nor are they closely related. Why not go for another smaller jay? For example, the dwarf jay is the smallest member of its family and would work perfectly as a pre-evolution to Corvisquire. You don't even have to drastically change its design. Just change the yellow belly to blue and boom! If anything, the yellow now looks more out of place than this blue version does, so what's up with that? Well, there could be a couple of reasons. For instance, jays are not all that common in the UK. The Eurasian jay is the only species that calls the island nation home, and color scheme-wise, it's all out of whack. On the other hand, there are 7 different species of tit that can be found throughout the region, and the Eurasian blue tit is especially popular among the group. They're basically a staple to the country. Not only that, but another species, the great tit, has the same white facial pattern Rookidee has, which creates this angry venom-eye effect. But even though it looks mean and nasty, it's just a facade. Tits are pretty passive by nature, and so are these birds, which is why its actual eye is just a typical bird eye with no clear emotion. But personality isn't what takes you far in showbiz, kid. It's all about the looks. And look! The black-throated magpie jay looks super angry too. This one's connection is a little deeper to Corviknight, but we'll get to that in a second. But for now, even if they're not directly related by blood, all it takes is a conveniently shaped eyebrow to find your true family. It's one angry-looking bird evolving into another angry-looking bird, which finally brings us to the head honcho of the angry birds. No, not you. Get back in your box! Corviknight. And just so we're clear, it is a raven, not a crow. It says so right here in the Pokédex classification. But it is worth noting that in the UK, especially in the olden times, they usually just use the words kind of interchangeably between the two. Even in heraldry, the study of coat of arms, crows and ravens aren't different from one another, and are just referred to as Corvus, as in Corvidae, the family of raven. Also, before I forget to bring this up again, jays are in this family as well. Yeah, you wouldn't expect it because it's so blue and then it's so black, but then also considering these guys, the world is full of surprises, and one of them is Corviknight. But what's not a surprise is, of course, the regional bird of the Galar region had to be a raven. They're integral to British culture, both in positive and negative ways. And I'm feeling like a glass half full guy today, so let's start with the Ravens of the Tower of London. Officially known as Her Majesty's Royal Palace, the tower's really a castle and has stood in London for nearly 1,000 years. Throughout history, it's been used as anything you could think of: an armory, a treasury, a menagerie, and controlling the towers has been key to controlling London, as evident through several historical battles. It's amazing how much history and culture this building has within and around its walls. It's really a shame its construction was originally a symbol of oppression to the people of London by the elites. Yeah, just like how crows and ravens are seen as bad omens, there's really no good omen attached to this building either, and that's true for the ravens that come along with it. Since 1883, there's always been at least one raven captive in the tower at all times. Today, 6 call the castle home. Superstitions and folklore say this is a necessary tradition, as the birds protect the metaphorical crown of the country. If they were to ever leave, this would commence the destruction of the crown, leading to the end of the country. So yes, absolutely the regional bird had to be a raven, because these ravens have the most responsibility of any bird ever. For the crown anyway. Just forget about the ecosystem for today. Corviknight adopts the raven's jet black wings and brings with them kingly elements. We see a returning full-grown beard sticking out from its helmet, and it also appears to be wearing a kingly cape while its wings are folded with these shoulder plume things it has going on. But the royals are not the only early European classes it's mastered. The second part of its name, of course, explains the steel typing. Forget a metal coat. This Pokemon has a full body of metal knight armor. From the helmet to the chest plate to the boots. Whatever these are, this is not the point. What is important is the type of the armor it's wearing. These separations in the feathers are very reminiscent of the ridges found on fluted armor, which the English popularized in the 15th century because the ridges provided ample protection for some relatively lightweight armor. Which is the second reason Corviknight chose this style. It's a bird. It needs to fly. It can't be weighed down by all these heavy pieces of metal. Like, no wonder it's mad. It quadrupled its weight when it evolved, and now it has to carry around all this heavy armor, but at least it's light for being heavy armor. Jokes aside, I bet you were curious why the whole evolution line is so angry, with their faux angry eyes turning into real angry eyes that drive terror into the heart of any foe. Like, yes, on the one hand, corvids are known to be mischievous, maybe even evil, but that doesn't necessarily mean angry, right? Well, since it's a raven knight, and ravens are black as the night, that also makes Corviknight a Black Knight, a mythical villain from Arthurian legend, who wears an entire set of black armor with no discernible heraldry to be displayed. Notably, there's also the White Knight, the antithesis to the Black Knight in every way, which is why Corviknight's shiny is white. Black Knights used this anonymity to commit heinous misdeeds and bring bad omens to those less fortunate. And that may just be a fairy tale, but the scariest thing is, no matter what myths say, reality doesn't lie. Wild ravens tend to be short-tempered, hateful rats by nature. And I suppose if any emotion represented evil, it would be anger. Hence these evil-looking birds. The worst part, though, is that they're smart, too, as they can recognize and remember human faces, especially those who have duped them into an unfair deal. They relentlessly attack them over and over every time they spot the swindler with no signs of stopping. Scientists studying them have had to wear face masks in order to hide their identities so that the ravens and crows don't attack them all the time because, oh, they messed with me one time for an experiment. Not even like a mean experiment, just like, ooh, I'm gonna give it food this one time and then not give it food this other time. And then they're like, oh, you didn't give me food this time. I'm gonna peck you to death. And the worst part is even after the crow or raven that you did your experiments on dies, that the meanness doesn't end there because ravens teach other ravens about you. They give information to their peers and offspring, so the harassment never stops. A group of corvids, by the way, is commonly referred to as an unkindness, a conspiracy, and even a murder. Nothing at all ominous about that. Absolutely nothing untrustworthy either. I can definitely see why Galarians based their air taxi service on an angry bird of bad omens. Though seemingly random, there is a reason Game Freak decided to make Corviknight the star of the Galar region's taxi service. Let's go back to Rookidee for a moment. Even though we've determined it's a rookie chickadee, its name could also be interpreted as a rook chickadee, as in the chess piece. The name rook comes from the Persian word meaning chariot. Chess may have originated in India and then got popular in the Persian Empire long before it took Europe by storm. But it still took Europe by storm, and here they interpreted the rook piece to be a tower instead of a chariot, so rather than renaming the piece to tower or just leaving it as a chariot, we're left with this rough translation of a word that doesn't really mean anything anymore. Except it does, though probably not what chess translators were going for. There is a real rook out there, and it's this.
Oh my god, why is its face naked?
Oh, those are just white feathers, oh thank goodness. And it's just another corvid found in the UK. And that's it. That's the whole reason it's a taxi service. It's a 4D chess pun about chess. And lastly, there's the Gigantamax form, and honestly, it's pretty disappointing compared to most of the other Gigantamaxes. Like, appearance-wise, it doesn't change all that much. Its shiny does, slightly. It's just now gold, the ultimate prize to any king. But regular Gigantamax Corviknight, it's just kind of the same with red highlights, and this is potentially just a reference to the Roc, a massive mythological bird from, again, Persia, that was said to be so large it could grab an Indian elephant and take it airborne. Indian elephants, you say? Why? It's halfway to being a Pokemon already. Also, it's called the Roc, and then there's the Rook. We're at 5D chess now, boys. Reported sizes of this creature vary, but most depictions place it anywhere in the 40 to 50 foot range, which Gigantamax Corviknight just so happens to fit into, at 46 feet tall. In fact, that actually makes it abnormally small for a Gigantamax Pokemon. It's one of the only two to be this small. And that makes its size feel all the more intentional, doesn't it? Like to make it fit perfectly in the range of rocks? Regardless, the one cool thing it does gain are these special feathers that detach from Corviknight, and according to the Shield Pokedex entries, they are known as blade birds. There are 8 of them in total, and they each can attack foes independently from the Pokemon. It's kinda like Mega Kangaskhan. The base Pokemon doesn't really change, but who needs change when you gain the power of friendship? And of course, corvids are social animals, usually hanging out in groups of 2 to 8, so each blade bird is one of the boys dropping in to offer some assistance, in a way. It's not like Corviknight is forced to use all 8 at once either. After all, it's only using 4 in its official artwork, and this actually gives Corviknight the freedom to pick how severe its opponent's punishment should be. What on earth is going on?
Young Lockstin, you are on trial for disrespecting the sanctity of Ravenclaw. How do you plead?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Silence! For your crimes against crowkind, I sentence you to the beating of 8 crows for 8 seconds.
Oh, please, no, not that. I don't want to live through that again.
I quite enjoyed it. Hey, wait a minute! Are we just watching your old content? Are you recycling views?
How did it take you this long to realize that? There's literally only a single regional bird Pokemon line left.
I I guess I just somehow thought higher of you.
You really shouldn't. Now here's the last bird. It's Kilowattrel. At least the storm brought dinner! So get this, there are a number of seabirds that actually chase storms. Yeah, like the storm chasers. They seek the calmer eye of the storm, of course, but doing so keeps them safe, and the extra wind helps them fly with relative ease. I mean, some of these birds stay out in the ocean for months at a time, so anything they can do to help them conserve energy helps. Even if there's a risk of zaps. But today's Pokemon doesn't have to worry about that! Yes, we're talking about Wattrel and Kilowattrel, the newest regional bird Pokemon as of recording. And as their names suggest, they are a pair of electric flying types. A watt is a standard unit used to measure electricity, and thus a kilowatt is a measurement of electricity that is bigger, like a gram and a kilogram. I, for one, am a huge fan, so I too can help these seabirds stay aloft. But no, I'm a huge fan of this trend of giving early route Pokemon non-standard typings. Since Gen 1, we've always had the same boring, normal type Sentrits and bug, poison, Wurmples nearly every single time. But from Gen 6 onwards, the regional birds have all ditched the standard flying normal for more exotic typings. Except for that one. But 3 out of 4 is alright. But these two got their fire and steel typings for concrete reasons. Corviknight dons a full suit of armor inspired by medieval knights, and Talonflame, a flame-tipped arrow crossed with an Australian firehawk, a bird that literally wields fire while hunting. So now is the same true for the Wattrel line? Well, kinda. The connection here is more theoretical than concrete. It comes from the second part of their names, that trell. You see, petrels are a type of seabird that you could find pretty much on any coast of the planet, though they spend significantly more time out at sea than on the shore, which is why you may have never heard of them before. They behave similarly to your typical seagull. They're just a lot tinier, and we're talking like sparrow sizes here. Little cuties. But the unique thing about these birds is, unlike gulls or boobies, petrels span across multiple families. They're all a part of the Procellariiformes order, so technically related, but in a second cousin you vaguely know but have never really interacted with sort of way. For example, diving petrels have short and stout bodies designed to hunt krill and other small crustaceans by diving and swimming through water. Now compare that to the typical petrel, who are more so designed to be all-arounders, eating just about anything they can get their wings on. When placed side by side, you can see how they sort of fit together, but it'd be much more appropriate to put this one with fulmars and skuas, and this one with ox, another seabird known for its plump body and scoopier bill. And speaking of diving petrels, their signature behavior inspires Wattrel's Scarlet Pokédex entry. This Pokémon dives into the ocean, catching prey by electrocuting them. That second bit definitely takes after electrofishing. It's an efficient fishing method used by governments and other environmental agencies where an electrical current pulses through a river. Any fish swimming through the pulse will be temporarily stunned and float to the surface. This is mainly used by scientists to survey fish populations, and as painful as it looks, it's one of the more humane fishing approaches under managed conditions, but this strategy can quickly become dangerous when used for unregulated purposes, so it's banned for recreational use in most of the US. And that means you're banned too, mister! Give me that taser! Oh, you are so grounded!
And now, let's talk about
The storm petrels. Appearance-wise, they're a lot closer to more regular petrels, but the main difference is that storm petrels are entirely pelagic birds, which means they spend their entire lives at sea, only shoring on rocky cliffs for their breeding season, since eggs don't really float. Pokemon reflects this well. That's why you can only find them along the Paldean shores, especially in cliffy areas. Appearance-wise, it seems to mix elements from the fork-tailed storm petrel and the black storm petrel, made evident by the black body and forked tail. Most species of petrel have square tail feathers to help them stay airborne, but some sacrifice this to help them move more aerodynamically through the air. Plus, I mean, just look at it, the color scheme is nearly identical. They just darkened the browns and substituted the lighter accents for yellow to reflect the electric typing. The standard for electric-type Pokemon. Also, if you haven't picked up on it already, its electric typing is obviously a play on thunderstorms. It has storm in the name, just like the storm petrels. However, it's more than just a name. Honestly, I can't think of any other animal more deserving of this type, because the real bird is already quite associated with thunderstorms. I mean, why else would it be called the storm petrel? The mythology and legends surrounding these birds comes mostly from old sailor stories. Some say storm petrels are the lost souls of drowned sailors and pirate captains who mistreated their crews, doomed to explore the skies of the seas for eternity, but just out of reach of the waters they once called home. If the poor souls began encircling a ship, they were clearly summoning a terrible thunderstorm to spread their misfortune. Others saw them as a warning sign of inclement weather rather than a cause, though, similar to how Absol works with natural disasters. The nickname Mother Carries Chickens was given to them even, a name derived from Mater Sarah, or Dear Virgin Mother, Virgin Mary. The petrels were seen as protectors, believed to have been sent by Mary herself to forewarn of the impending downpour of the storm. This gave crews time to batten down the hatches, draw the sails, and prepare themselves for what lay ahead. And for the most part, this is actually pretty accurate to reality. Most of the time, yes, whenever the petrels show up, a storm will soon follow after. But it's not due to any mysticism or divine intervention or anything like that. In reality, these birds don't like to hang around people, so they actively try to avoid ships or any unknown foreign object. But being the smallest seabird and all, they don't really have much of a chance to escape a rapidly approaching storm when they're constantly being pushed around by the strong winds that come with it. So they seek shelter anywhere they can, and a sailor's ship works great. So they put their disdain for humanity aside for a moment to survive. Now I want to go back to its Violet Pokedex entry because there's some intriguing stuff in there. These Pokemon make their nests on coastal cliffs. The nests have a strange crackling texture, and they're a popular delicacy. So cliffs, yeah. Let's start there. It's true that most petrels only build their nests on rocky cliffs and are only around during the mating season, and you can bet your delicious buns that the many high cliffs around the Iberian Peninsula, what Paldea is based on, is one of those popular petrel spots. Over a dozen species call both Spain and Portugal home. In fact, a small uninhabited island off the coast of Portugal is the only place on Earth the critically endangered Desertas petrel has an established nesting colony. But now, what about that other part of the dex entry? Yeah, apparently the people of Paldea eat Wattrel nests. And yes, apparently people do that in real life too. But it's not petrel nests specifically. Instead, it's swiftlet nests. They are considered a delicacy in some Chinese cuisines. They even named one of the species edible nest swiftlet, just because we eat their nests so often. They're primarily consumed in China and other Southeast Asian countries, and are one of the world's most expensive edible animal products. A pound of these nests can go for $3,000, which is just insane. The nests are usually cooked into a soup or stew, as they add a gelatinous consistency to the broth. Eating the soup is said to provide many health benefits to the consumer, with some doctors claiming they contain medicinal properties. So okay, what you're all asking now is, alright, what does it taste like? Well, I obviously haven't had it, but most reports describe its taste as that of salty and fishy poultry, though the taste is subtle. Perhaps the crackling taste the Pokedex mentioned doesn't really apply here, so it's likely that's just a reference to some lingering static electricity within the electric type's nests. Now, you may be looking at these examples and thinking, oh gross, they're covered in bird poo, but no, thankfully no. And even if they were, it wouldn't be the only animal poop people eat. But yes, no, it's not poop. It's just spit. Like honey. It's still kinda gross, but not as bad as I thought at first. No bird poop-hop rocks here. When its wings catch the wind, the bones within produce electricity. They just needed to tie electric generation in there somehow. IRL birds are super poor conductors. I mean, have you ever seen them hang around power lines? It's no issue to them. And despite this video's silly intro, birds actually very rarely get zapped by lightning. You see, lightning is always looking to escape into the ground or even the ocean. And if it were to strike a bird in flight, it then has no viable path to reach the ground or the ocean. So while freak accidents happen, birds typically don't get so much as static shocks from being within lightning storms. But it is worth mentioning that blueprints and prototypes for bird flight generators exist, which would use the power generated from flapping wings to charge a battery. Think of it like super small and living windmills. It's the same concept. These designs have never really been used on a wide scale aside from just some small tests, but there have been worse ideas, like eating a nest. So while petrels and seabirds don't generate electricity this way, they do soar high above the seas, spending most of their lives with very few landing opportunities. So these birds either need to adapt hydrophobic feathers to let them land in the water, or feathers that more easily catch wind to conserve extra energy, letting the moving air naturally lift them up rather than them having to constantly flap. And storm petrels evolved to focus on the latter, though they do have an oil coating on their feathers to help repel water too, so getting wet isn't a game over. And good thing it's not, because that would make catching food really, really complicated, considering they eat fish and almost nothing but actually, storm petrels specifically don't hunt the way the Pokédex mentioned Wattrel hunting. Remember, that's a diving petrel thing. So instead, storm petrels coast right above the surface of the water, looking for any small fish and crustaceans. Then when it finds a target, it scoops it up with its scoopy-banoopy shaped bill, and it returns to the sky. Just typical seabird stuff. What's not so typical, though, is how it uses its feet. By kicking across the surface, it better positions itself for a clean grab. Most predators use stealth to ambush prey, but sometimes awkwardly walking on the water to brute force your way in works too. And this is actually where the name petrel comes from, by the way. In the Bible, Jesus appeared before Peter while he was on a boat looking for Christ. And after Jesus confirms his identity, Peter leaves the boat and walks across the water's surface to meet him. Sailors then compared the behavior the birds displayed to the miracle of St. Peter and named them petrels. Like, it's not an exact match, but you can see how translating it through so many different languages and centuries of history could decipher it back to Peter. Peter, petrel, yeah.
Come to me, Bird Peter.
Oh, yes, Bird Jesus, I will.
Thank you, Bird Jesus. Whoa! That is one cool bird. It's Kilowattrel, because it's a killer. It has black and yellow lightning bolts everywhere. It has a weird throat sack thingy. Kilowattrel is kinda weird. On paper, this should be the coolest regional bird yet. Scars over the eyes, the classic black and yellow color scheme everyone loves shiny Rayquaza for, the sleek and sharp design, everything looks good, and yet I feel only slight affection for it. It's within my top 400 favorite Pokemon for sure, so it's above average, but not noteworthy. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. But regardless, the bird it's based on is quite remarkable. Something I should have mentioned about Wattrel is that its Pokédex classification is the Storm Petrel Pokemon. I'm never a huge fan of when they literally say something is the real-life counterpart that it obviously is already. Like, how do people in the Pokemon universe know what a Storm Petrel is? You know? But at least it makes my job easier. And Kilowattrel is classified as the Frigate Bird Pokemon. Frigate birds are a family of colossal seabirds comprising 5 species. And before you ask, yes, I see the throat thing too. It's a gular pouch. Most of the time, it just looks like a little bit of neck skin, similar to dewlaps on some other animals, but frigate birds can inflate these to create giant red balloons that look like airbags. And like some other sacs, only the males have them, as their sole purpose is to attract mates during the breeding season. There are some other types of birds that have these too, grouses and prairie chickens for instance, and pelicans have the most useful and most recognizable of them. And unlike the other birds, they use theirs as a big net. And this is similar to how Kilowattrel uses theirs. According to the Pokédex, Kilowattrel inflates its throat sac to amplify its electricity. It uses its throat sac to store electricity generated by its wings. So, there it is. Like a pelican storing fish, Kilowattrel stores electricity it generates there, which may act as a source of food or energy for the species. The yellow coloring could also reference the brownish yellow color seen on juvenile and female frigate birds, though it may just be as simple as electricity equals yellow. But while on the topic of dex entries, Scarlet states, by riding the wind, this Pokemon can fly over 430 miles daily, which is only a little under double what real frigate birds do, which is 250 miles a day. Still extremely impressive, but Pokemon math. What gets really impressive about frigate birds, though, is that they can stay aloft for several months, which is a long time to go without touching land or touching the water. They don't stay in one spot either. Some species, like the lesser frigate bird, will just cross the entire ocean on a whim, and when combining each species' known range, they can pretty much be found anywhere on Earth. Except Europe. We'll get to what it's doing in Paldea in a bit, but first let's talk about its connection to the storm petrel. Not much. For the longest time, frigate birds were grouped with the Solidias, a bird family that cormorants, gannets, and boobies are found in, but more recently, it was found that genetic differences separated them enough to be grouped into their own family. Frigatidae. I'll show you how to forget a day. Lots of piracy.
Where's the rum gone?
So gannets are still its closest relative, but less than initially thought. And the connection to petrels is even lesser, so it's not at all like the woodpecker to toucan thing we talked about a couple videos ago. So why pair the two? Well, maybe because of this bird, the Cape Verde shearwater. Shearwaters are another type of seabird you've never heard of. But don't worry, we're only going to go into a bit of detail with this one. Just see it as the missing link between Wattrel and Kilowattrel. After all, it does look a lot like a frigate bird, doesn't it? The dead giveaway is the hooked beak shape, and yes, they inhabit the seas of Portugal, so that's a check off the list. But wouldn't you know it, they're not even closely related to frigate birds either. No, they're in the Procellaridae, a massive family comprising diving petrels and many more, but it all comes together. So frigate birds to petrels are like that one uncle who married into the family that no one is quite sure who the spouse is, but they keep getting invited to the Christmas party anyways. You know? Now, do you want to know the coolest thing about Kilowattrel? It's technically a pirate. Yep, kilo doesn't just mean kilowatt, it really did mean killer. Sorry to throw a red heron at you. I hope being tricked wasn't too much of a burden. Even if it was, I have no regrets. But yes, Kilowattrel takes design elements from pirates in various ways. Its throat pouch resembles the big beards of famous pirates throughout history. Its wings also look like the torn edges of a fierce pirate flag, drifting in the wind. As Kilowattrel rides the winds across the seven seas, any who dare cross paths with ye mighty bird shall see ye yives flash before your eyes, as ye witness thy fully extended wings. And before ye can escape, you'll be dragged to Davy Jones' locker by none other than Kilowattrel, the lightning pirate. It actually gets these pirate motifs from frigate birds themselves. They earned themselves the nickname Pirate Bird for three reasons mainly. I already touched on the first, their exploration tendencies. Frigate birds will travel basically wherever the wind takes them, and I do mean anywhere. Take the magnificent frigate bird. Usually they'll hang out around the Bahamas in South America, but in 2021, bird watchers sighted one of them on Lake Michigan's shores. This means it had to fly across the entirety of the continental US to even reach here. And it's not like this is a one-time occurrence either. This was Michigan's 7th sighting on record. Plus, every year, one or two frigate birds end up in extreme northern states, and even Canada occasionally. Places they have no business being in whatsoever. And the same is true for Europe. Every so often, one will show up hundreds of miles away from home. And the same is true for Kilowattrel. Just because its home isn't Paldea, neither is Kanto, Kalos, or any other region for that matter. When you're a true pirate, nowhere is your home, and everywhere is your home at the same time. Well, except for the water. Despite how cool frigate birds are, they are the only seabird on the planet that cannot swim. They have no oily protection on their feathers, so getting wet means they can't fly until they dry out. And in the middle of the ocean, that's a really tough pickle to get out of. So, just like how the sea is a watery grave for a pirate, so too is it for a frigate bird. It's like eating a gum-gum fruit and getting the worst power ever, like, ooh, a superpower, what do I get? A balloon. It's my new superpower. Oh boy, a balloon. and lightheadedness. What am I supposed to do with this? But this extreme weakness to water that frigate birds have is also reflected in Kilowattrel's Pokedex entry. There's hardly any oil in its feathers, so it's a poor swimmer. But wait, if they can't go in the water, and they're almost always out at sea, I can understand them hovering and sitting in the air with the updrafts to sleep, but how do they eat? Since they can't hunt fish on their own, well, they take pretty extreme measures by preying on other birds, continuing the common regional bird evolution trend of small passerine bird evolving into a predator. It's existed since Gen 1, still around in Gen 9. However, it's not as simple as you think. Their hunts are much more unique than just eating birds as prey. In the most piratey fashion possible, they actually ambush smaller birds and steal their food from them by continuously diving and pecking at their target, all while airborne. The poor little bird is eventually forced to regurgitate their last meal to stop the onslaught. The frigate bird will then swoop in and capture the surrendered treasure, filling its belly with a stolen meal. They do this in groups too, playing dirty to gang up on one target. It's a very backhanded strategy. Only the most rotten of crews and pirates would dare do such a thing. It truly is deserving of the nickname, the Pirate Bird. This is another unexpected connector to the Paldean region. Spanish sailors were the first to witness this behavior of the frigate bird, and thus were the ones who gave it the Pirate Bird nickname. And I just love that about this bird. It took such a simple concept like a pirate bird, and they branched a whole tree connecting all these dots between Wattrel, Kilowattrel, and the Paldean region, and the real birds they're pulling from, all joining together. It's so cool. And the reason Wattrel evolves into Kilowattrel and is the regional bird of Paldea is because they all relate to an overarching theme: exploration. Portugal and Spain have always been exploration powerhouses. From Christopher Columbus setting off for America from Palos de la Frontera, Spain, to Portugal, mapping out African coasts for the first time. Travel and expedition is baked into the blood of the Iberian Peninsula. And the same is true for petrels and frigate birds. The seas are seen as the final frontier of earthly exploration. Yet, these birds have adventured them their entire lives. Frigate birds are even named directly after frigate ships, massive warships designed for speed and maneuverability that are used explicitly for Navy scouting and spying. Again, this connects back to Portugal, as they have the longest serving navy in the world that still stands today, encompassing 5 active frigates. Wattrel doesn't sit the exploration vehicle influence out either. Remember that funny landing it does? Well, that's incredibly similar to how seaplanes land. Seaplane travel is one of the only reasonable ways to reach some of the most secluded areas of Earth, such as tiny islands or the whole of Antarctica. Wattrel's feathers on its head even resembles a little aviator cap with goggles so it doesn't get wind in its eyes. It's so cute! So really, when you look at them from the lens of what they represent versus what they are, you really start to see how they fit into the region perfectly. And that's, for lack of a better word, really cool. Just like you. And just not like Talonflame.
Wait, is that all?
Yes?
You didn't talk about Wingo!
Well, it's not a regional bird.
Says who?
That's actually a really good question. Regional bird is a fan-made term, it turns out, and the definition even changes through the generations. I think it's time for a discussion. What even is a regional bird Pokemon? You see, there is no super straightforward answer because, it's a fan-made term. But then again, you know what else is a fan-made term? Evolution, Pikachu clone, Legendary Duo, and Legendary Trio, referring to sets of games as generations. The Weather Trio, Pseudo-Legendaries, and even Shiny. Yes, even Shiny was a fan-made term until it was later adopted officially. So, there is no official "this is the answer to our question" about regional birds. And yet, if you asked a Pokemon fan, they'll likely give you a confident answer. And then you ask a different Pokemon fan, and they will confidently give you a different answer. So here's how I've always defined it. To me, the regional birds are the evolutionary lines of Pidgeot, Noctowl, Swellow, Staraptor, Unfezant, Talonflame, Toucannon, Corviknight, and Kilowattrel. That's it. One line per region, and there are similarities here. They all evolve. They are all flying type. They are all fitting of the region they were introduced in. They're all birds. And that's actually where the similarities end. Some of them evolve once, others twice. And at first it was easy to define what a regional bird was because they were all purely normal flying type until Generation 6. But even then, if that was the defining factor, why wouldn't you count Braviary here? It's a normal flying type bird that's fitting of the region it was introduced in, and it evolves, and thus you begin to see the trickiness of defining regional bird. For a sort of real-world equivalent here, consider fish. Everybody knows what a fish is, right? These are all fish, and yet, other than living in the water, none of these have much else in common. These are all like totally different kinds of animals, some of whom are not even close to the same branch on the tree of life, and thus, fish is, scientifically speaking, a taxonomically and cladistically useless term. It doesn't mean anything. Meaning, yes, everybody knows what a fish is, and if you asked them what a fish is, they would probably give you an answer pretty confidently, but if you actually try to define it in a specific way that makes perfect sense, you find that there's no real way to do so. So, why wouldn't you count Braviary as a regional bird? Well, one thing that does make it stand out among this group is that it evolves late, at level 54. Compare that to my list of regional birds, who all evolve rather early, level 18 to 25 for the first evolution, and the early to mid-30s for the second, if there is even a second. So, okay, Braviary doesn't count, nor does Mandibuzz, and to sort of doubly rule them out, they do tend to be version exclusive with each other, unlike the rest of the birds here. But then, what about Spearow? It's found on the early routes, and it evolves early, and it's normal flying type for all that matters. Why do I, instinctively, at my core of cores, not want to include it in my list of regional bird Pokemon? Is it just because it was super mean to Ash? I mean, that's not a good reason. Lots of Pokemon are mean to Ash. But actually, okay, speaking of Ash, he had a Pidgeot, a Noctowl, a Swellow, a Staraptor, and an Unfezant, and a Talonflame. Ash always had the regional bird Pokemon. So that's very likely a big part of what forms my definition for it, and thus also many others' definition for it. But Spearow, and Wingull too for that matter, sure, they're early route evolving birds, but Ash didn't have them, so they aren't as important, so they are not the regional birds. That obviously doesn't work as of Gen 7 now, does it? Ash doesn't have a Toucannon, he doesn't have a Corviknight either, and now he's gone. So I don't think we can use him as a part of our definition. Well, let's back up to Wingull again. Why don't I want to include it? I mean, it's right next to Swellow in the Pokedex. Is it because it's water flying type? But as of Gen 6, that doesn't matter. Unless Fletchling. Fletchling may eventually evolve into Talonflame, but Fletchling itself is still normal flying type. Maybe the regional birds still have to start as normal flying. The normal can later be swapped out for another type later. Except no, that also doesn't work because Rookity and its whole line are just flying type until eventually slapping steel on there. And Wattrel, it's electric flying from the start. Being a bit stumped, and this being a fan-made term and all, I asked the fans on my Twitter, how would you define regional bird Pokemon? Bad punctuation aside, I found that the most common response, other than just a flying type bird, because like, duh, was the mention of early routes. But what route does Wattrel call home? Like, if it was in the first linear area in Scarlet and Violet, I would absolutely count that, but it's an open-world game. So where do they spawn? Okay, so still near the area you start, the nearby beaches. Maybe it's okay to still consider early game a qualifier, since routes might not really be a thing anymore. But I think I could further specify common here. Like, if you overlay Wattrel and Kilowattrel spawn locations, you get The entire coastline and the oceans. They are based on coastal and pelagic birds after all. And plus, shouldn't a regional bird be found all around the region? Like, would you count Natu as a regional bird? I wouldn't. Sure, it evolves early, is found early-ish, and it's a flying bird, but like, it's only found in the ruins of Alf. Compare that to Hoothoot, who is found, in like half of the places. But problem, red flags, siren alarm blaring. This would mean we'd have to include Wingull, which I get nobody wants to do. But like, Wingull is actually significantly more common than Taillow. Oh no! And it's found on earlier routes than Taillow. So, okay, the only definition that kinda works now is flying type bird Pokemon that evolves in the region it was introduced in, and is early in the regional Pokedex, and found early in the game, and is common throughout the region. Thus, a regional bird. So no Ducklet, no Doduo, no Natu, no Swablu, no Rufflet or Volibee, and no Rowlet. It is a starter, so that is kind of its own thing. But that does leave us with my original list, as well as Wingull and Spearow. I don't like that. Not at all. Regional bird may be arbitrary and useless and not really mean anything, but there has to be some way for me not to count them. I have got to find a way to gerrymander a definition. Maybe stats? I did see some folks on Twitter specify base stat total. 450 to 500, according to Dark and Windy, and that makes sense. The region's iconic regional bird should be good. At least good seeming on the surface. Bigger number equals better and all that. That kind of good, not necessarily like good in the meta, you know. So let's see where that gets us. Starting with the birds I'd consider. Yeah, they all fit that range. And so, you know, the numbers in parentheses are their original stat totals. Over time, but especially in Gen 6 and 7, various Pokemon would get buffed for balancing's sake. So, where do Fearow and Pelipper fall? Whoa. We've cut them out of the definition!
A regional bird is a common, early game, flying type bird Pokemon that evolves with its final stage having a base stat total of 450 or more.
Sucks to be you, Chatot! But wait, hang on. Originally, Swellow and Noctowl don't fit this definition. So originally, did those games not have regional birds, or did the definition change at some point? Interestingly, Swellow and Pelipper had the same base stat total when they were introduced. Only after being buffed did Swellow exceed Pelipper, who was also buffed. They didn't forget about it, they just didn't buff it nearly as much. So when Ruby and Sapphire were first released, was the intent to have them both be regional birds? Possibly, but I think what's more likely is that Game Freak wasn't thinking about this whatsoever, because it's a fan-made term, and one that didn't really become common until quite a bit after this generation of games. I feel like it started around Gen 4. I could just be remembering wrong. But what is possible is that maybe Game Freak eventually caught wind of this term and how most people counted Swellow but not Pelipper, and so buffed them accordingly when the time came to do so, of course. Or maybe none of this matters. Still fun to think about though. But I think that if you really needed to have a definition that includes only these Pokemon both before and after all the buffing, you would have to say that the definition changed at some point. Perhaps before this definition that we gave, it was simply, instead, a regional bird is the early route normal flying type Pokemon that Ash had. Gen 7 was the first time Ash didn't have one, and Gen 7 is also when most of these buffs happened to make Swellow and Noctowl count in our newest definition without including Pelipper and Fearow. Lines up fairly well. So, I guess those are the definition. That was it originally. This is it now. They're both completely useless, but I guess to some people it does make these birds stand out as something special, and they probably really like that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what do you think of the regional birds? What do you think of their origins? By this point, we've now delved deep into the design, inspirations, and lore of every single regional bird Pokemon, by my definition of it. But if you're still not sick of birds yet, we of course cover many more birds in other videos, like this one here, covering Flamigo, Bombardier, and Squawkabilly all in one, or here, why it's a luchador and France? Why is Hawlucha and Kalos? And the heck is wrong with Cramorant just in general? Or the Galarian legendary birds for that matter? It begs so many questions. So check those out if you haven't seen them. And thanks for watching and being awesome all year. Never stop using your noggin.